So I have this model called the ACSS model that I train to my entire staff. And that ACSS model stands for authority, comfort, social skills, and then skills. 90% of people say they need more skills, but what they need is authority or comfort. And they can't be comfortable in a conversation. Mm-hmm. So I could give you, like I would talk to these clients and I would say, I could spend $10 million, write the best persuasion script for whatever your ideal outcome is, hand you this thing on a silver platter. And if you're not comfortable in that conversation, you're not going to be successful. So I could give it to somebody with social anxiety and have them go read this out loud. It's not Harry Potter. We're not reading spells. It's not a spell. So a lot of people's problems come from comfort, a lack of being able to be comfortable in a conversation, and the level of authority that they might have. And I don't mean hierarchical authority. I just mean personal authority. But they don't know it. They think it's, I need more social skills, I need to learn small talk, or I need this little technique. So every time, the one thing I tell every client is, if I give you a flight checklist right now for a small plane, a Cessna 172, are you a pilot? No. Having this little checklist of what to do does not give you the skill. So a lot of that, so much of that comes from comfort. And the problem that a lot of people have is they're competing with other people on height, on looks, on social status, money, hierarchy, confidence, all of this other stuff. The number one thing you need to compare yourself with other people on is comfort. That's it. Is, can I be more comfortable than the other person in this conversation? Because our brains are naturally wired to compete. We can't turn competition off, but we can change what they're focused on. And if they're focused on comfort, we win a lot more conversations.
Comfort?
Yeah.
How does that manifest? Is that just like being like physically comfortable? What is that?
Yeah, it would be physical comfort. So one of the challenges I give to people is, for your first week, the only thing I want you to focus on, I'm not going to give you this long list to go look into your phone and have to read it before every meeting. The one thing I want you to focus on this week is, can you move slower than the other people in the room? That's it. Just adjusting the speed limit on your body. So if you were standing in a swimming pool, how fast would your arms and legs move if you were underwater? And make that the speed limit for this entire week. That's all I want you to focus on. And that makes so many changes in people's mind, because we change our bodies and we change how our emotions are feeling. And there's one thing that fear does, it speeds our body up. So if you see someone doing these rapid, jerky movements, you're seeing mostly fear or stress in their body.
So get more comfortable in an interaction conversation, even if it's on the phone or in person.
Yeah, so on the phone, it would be speaking at a normal, composed pace.
Okay.
And then, so step 2 is composure. Can I get you into a place where you have some composure? And the left and right side of composure, we have collapse and we have posturing. So we have a person that makes themselves small so other people can be comfortable, or I make myself big so other people can get away from me. Mm-hmm. And we see that with every aspect of our lives. Like when I first started my business, or when I first got out of the military, these people called me for a keynote. So this guy calls me and he's like, "What's your hourly rate?" And I said, $6,000. And I said, "That's including travel and all that." And the only thing he didn't say anything on the phone. He just goes, That's it. He just made that noise. And right away I said, "Oh yeah, but we could do a discount. I could probably do like $5,000. We could even take some off 50%. I could even take 75% since you're here, and I have to do this." It just made up excuses. And I almost got to the point where I was like, "Let me pay you. I'll give you some money if you come let me speak on stage for you." And that's collapse. So I'm in collapse in some areas of my life. I might posture in some areas of my life. And our goal is to get out of that swing. But the problem most people have, if I'm living in collapse, the solution looks like posturing. And we see this in like guys that learn pickup. Like, I'm going to learn how to posture because it's the opposite of what I'm doing. It's not the center where I need to be.
And what is the center? That's composure.
That would be composure. And I would say composure is the combination of the things that make up authority. And authority is made up of 5 things. And that's confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment. So I have authority inventory. This is day one, the first thing that I give to intelligence people, or I've got a guy that owns a car dealership, whoever the client is. And it's the authority assessment. It assesses you on those things. And wherever your lowest point is, that's what's keeping you from being successful in most conversations when you need to persuade somebody. And it pinpoints it very quickly. And if I could go into this a little further, the way that we live our lives off camera, I'm sure you would agree. You just had Vanessa Van Edwards on. It bleeds out in our body language. It bleeds out in not just body language, but how we breathe, how we talk, how we come across. So even if I read that article on LinkedIn of 19 ways to look more confident, and it says, well, have better posture, sit up straighter, shake hands, make better eye contact. I did all of that and I look really presentable, but back home, I've got a 8-foot pile of laundry sitting in the bedroom. My bed's nasty. I've got dishes all piled up in the sink. There's a part of our brain that's somehow dedicated to reminding us, I'm faking it right now. And that comes across. So whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously, we're manufacturing gut feelings in other people. So our job is to manufacture better gut feelings. And the 5 most common ways that those bleed out in our everyday life is how we manage 5 areas of our life. And that is our environment. Like, do I take care of my environment? My time, appearance, my social life, and my financial life. Because those are the 5 things we worry about in the back of our head that start bleeding out these gut feelings. Because we've all had a conversation where everything on the surface looked great, but afterwards we were like, something was off. I don't know what it was, but something just didn't feel right about that guy. And we've all had that little experience. And getting a hold of those 5 qualities that make up authority are the fastest way to get success in your life and just drastically start changing your life.
So it's really that the controllable element. It's our environment, our time, our appearance, our social life, and our finances. That's the like controllable foundation to all these other things that we talked about.
Yeah. So that would be the bottom foundation of that little pyramid. And the far left side of that triangle would be confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment.
Yeah.
And those elements alone produce feelings in other people that make them see an authority figure. And you've heard of the Milgram experiment.
Oh gosh, it reminds me of something I read when I was 16 in psychology class in a textbook.
Probably did.
That was the one where they got people to shock each other.
Yeah.
Please explain.
All right, let me give you a quick recap. It's Yale University. I think it's 1962. And Yale runs an ad in the paper that says, come help us with this study on learning, and we'll give you $20 or lunch voucher or something like that. So all these volunteers come out, and there's a tall guy in a lab coat, an official clipboard there, and there's one other volunteer, and you draw straws. One of you is the teacher, one of you is the learner. So you're led into this room, you watch this learner guy get strapped up. He's on this table getting strapped up to this electric shock machine, and every time he gets a question on this quiz wrong, you've got to shock him. You have to hit the button. And every progressive question, you increase the voltage on this machine that goes all the way up on the far right to XXX, danger, severe shock is what it says on there. But the whole time you're shocking him, you can hear the guy screaming on the other side of the wall. He's screaming. And midway through the process, the guy's banging on the wall. He's like, I have a heart condition. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm out. I quit. I don't want to do the experiment. And 90% of these people will turn around to the guy in the lab coat, and the guy in the lab coat's like, please continue. It's important that you continue the experiment. So I keep going, and almost to the end, no more response. It's just silence. The guy doesn't even respond to questions. And the guy in the lab coat says, any non-answer has to be treated as if it were an incorrect answer. Please continue. And they keep going and going and going. And you can watch some of these are on video, and you just watch their faces toward the end. These psychiatrists at the beginning of this predicted less than 1% would go all the way. 67% of people go all the way. And 250 volts is enough to kill you. 100% went up to 250. The presence of novelty and authority did everything. It made a person commit murder. And I would argue that's more difficult than selling someone a car.
And that authority comes, in that particular example, came from going to the university, the lab coat, etc. But how do we establish authority ourselves? Is it going back to the things you said there about environment, appearance, etc., finances?
Yeah.
Is there are there physical expressions of that authority on a day-to-day basis?
There are. Slowness of movement is one of the most common. So we have slowness of movement. So the right side of that authority triangle has 5 letters on it, and that stands for movement, appearance, confidence, connection, and intent. Is our intent visible? That outward sign of authority is what a lot of people tend to look for. What does authority look like? But what we're really doing is, I want to look up the symptoms of authority, not the cause. Because all these LinkedIn articles, YouTube videos that are saying how to have more confidence, how to do X, Y, and Z, are how to have the symptoms instead of the cause of authority. So people with authority tend to sit up straight, but they don't sit up straight because they read an article. They sit up straight because they see the world a certain way. And that's so much of a difference between changing my worldview versus changing my posture. It's very different outcomes, and we're still generating those gut feelings in people.
Interesting. Have you worked with many people that come to you and they've got a clear authority problem? Is there a particular example you can think of where you were able to help someone turn their life around?
Many, hundreds.
Give me your favorite example.
My favorite example was a big CEO. He's in Los Angeles, and he asked me for skills. He starts off, I need the flight checklist. I don't need to learn to fly. I just need the checklist. But it takes me a while to kind of walk people back and say, like, let's get to the root of this. Because you can't just openly say you have an authority and comfort problem. Mm-hmm. And his employees would like openly make fun of him in board meetings and stuff like that. And he didn't like it. And his company was going downhill so fast. And I took him through this process of gaining, let's build up your confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment, all of those things. And let's find where your lowest point is of those 5. If I could just find your lowest point on that 5 list, then I know the highest leverage thing that I can do. So if the highest leverage that he can do would be confidence, that's the number one thing I'm going to start working on. And the moment we took him through that process, it was only a couple of months, and we used a lot of hypnosis. We used a lot of, I literally used brainwashing techniques to help him. So it's the same techniques. And you know what, cognitive behavioral therapy was also a form of brainwashing back in the day, and aversion therapy. But within just a few months, he went from around, I think, 600 to 800K per month to like 4 million a month. All of his employees were on board. He had this huge shift. The problem comes when you're a coach and you make someone's life change that fast, they have to have an excuse. They can't go back to the office and like, they're different, right? So they have to say this thing happened to me. I had this thing. So that's the first thing I work out with every client is like, you're going to have to go back and tell them something happened that changed your life, because you have to have a reason that you're going back different. So watching that transformation is so rewarding and incredible. But the confidence is usually what you have to change first with people.
How'd you do that?
You change what's going on inside their head. So you've gone on stage before, probably 1,000 or 2,000 people. You were on TV for a while. Even after you've been successful, have you ever even heard a tiny voice that said, "Why am I here?" Or like, "Do I deserve to be here?"
Yeah, I mean, doing this is a prime example of that.
Yeah. Or I'm faking it. People are going to find out I'm faking it.
Well, you feel like that when you're a podcaster because you didn't get any official qualifications, and then people started listening, and then they think that you know what you're doing, or you. Yeah. So I think I contend with that as a podcaster.
Yeah. So and they never go away. So the difference between a person who's confident and a person who doesn't have confidence is that they hear those voices as truth, and I hear them, or somebody with confidence hears them as fiction. They're both listening to the same thing. So imagine, like, as a quick story, if you and I were going to lunch And I said, Stephen, I'm going to come pick you up. I pull up in front of your house. You jump in the passenger side. We're heading off. And I'm listening to an audiobook about a nuclear bomb going off. But it's inside the audiobook, there's a fake news report about a nuclear bomb going off. Let's say it's a pretend BBC broadcast or something that's going off, that it's in the audiobook. We start driving. I'm relaxed. I'm focused on the road. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Your heart rate's increased. You're fearful. Your amygdala's firing off. You're in this horrible state of like, oh my God, what's going to happen to my family? We're both hearing the exact same broadcast. We're listening to the same speakers at the same time. But I know that I'm hearing fiction and you are worried that it's truth. I don't mean to use you as that example, but that's the easiest way to describe it. And then just fundamentally changing how you hear that voice. And 9 times, I think 10 times out of 10, that voice was developed when you were 8 or 9. What did that kid do? And this is what I would ask any of the clients. What did that kid do to make friends or keep them? So friends, to feel safe. Now we're in the safety, like, how did I get to feel safe? And what did I do to earn rewards? And for some people, that might be recognition. For other kids who had a bad start in life, that might be water or food, might have been a reward for those kids. So the way that we keep or earn friends, the way that we get rewards as a child, and the way that we feel what we have to do to feel safe, those develop as little apps in our brain that run in the background of our adult lives all the time. And we typically, as a kid, they're great. They might have kept us safe. They might have kept us alive. They might have held us inside of these social circles, but I'm going to be a dick to people so that they don't get close to me. Or I'm going to kiss up to authority figures like mom and dad so I'll get some recognition and praise. And that becomes an app that we carry into adulthood without knowing it, without our consent, without our awareness. That little kid brings these things into adulthood and they just modify. So I go from having to kiss up to a narcissistic mother to I'm going to kiss the boss's ass every single day. And everybody knows me as the office kiss ass. So they just translate from child to adult behavior. And if I can start understanding that, then I can start getting that person to understand the fundamental way to change their life. And I make them put those phrases out in the open to where it's so, I want them to be pissed off. So I will make them get a desktop wallpaper that says, I don't deserve money. Money is for other people. Just to make their brain see how stupid it is on a regular basis and put it on a motivational poster. And the second part of that is anybody who's confident has a generalized expectation of positive outcomes, not specific, but things are going to be fine. Things are going to be fine. So if I can do that, you can fundamentally change someone's life. So the final point of that, which leads into discipline, is I need to get you to form a relationship with your future self. Because everything that goes on in our life has to do with our mammalian brain, this lower part of our brain here, and it doesn't speak English. There's no affirmation that's going to penetrate that barrier. There's no like, I'm going to read a quote on a wall or a PowerPoint slide that's going to fundamentally change behavior. You have to change the animal, the mammalian part of the brain. So the question I ask everybody that I'm training is, how would I teach it to a dog? How would I show my goals if I'm setting goals for next year? How would I show that to a dog? Because I have to get it down to a mammal. So the fastest way to do that is through visual means. So I have all of my clients download this app. I can't remember the name of it. There's probably 100, but it makes you look like 95.
Yeah.
And you're just covered in wrinkles. It makes a lot of your hair kind of go away. And I make them print it out and put it everywhere just for a couple of weeks. And now we start developing a mental mammalian relationship with our future self, which changes how I eat, changes how I spend money. It changes maybe what time I go to bed, how much alcohol I drink. And mostly where I'm getting my dopamine from. If I draw a map of everywhere I'm getting my dopamine from, and more than 50% of it is on alcohol or porn or, all of these things that I don't want, you have to be very, very honest with yourself at that point of where do I need to get dopamine from in my life? And successful people, every single successful person that I've ever met has a good dopamine map. So they get dopamine from good sources instead of bad ones.
And is there a relationship between discipline and confidence?
I think so, very much. Because like if you and I were sitting in an airport together, let's say we're sitting in Atlanta airport, and I just asked you and you're not a behavior profiler, as far as I know, but I said, Stephen, look around and find somebody that's disciplined. It would take you 5 seconds because we don't need to profile people. That's a natural thing that you picked up on it on purpose, but we pick up on it unconsciously all the time. Yeah. So having that level of discipline elevates our level of confidence automatically because we know that other people are going to pick up on it, but we also know I'm moving up and I'm probably more in control of myself than the person that I'm talking to or the people that I'm dealing with regularly. So how we live off camera is coming through in our confidence. That's the exact thing that we were talking about with that environment, time, appearance. And if I can live off camera the same way that I want to be perceived by everybody in my life, my confidence already starts to grow.
And you said enjoyment as well was one of the 5.
Yeah.
Why is enjoyment important?
I added it on there. It took a while, but I walked through everybody I've ever trained. And if you look at everyone who is a natural leader and has that level of authority, they're not just partying in the moment, but just calmly enjoying what is happening now. So maybe you could call it mindfulness, but I think in just the trait of enjoyment and being in enjoyment is the most magnetic human trait that there is.
What do I need to know about observation, which is the second part of your triangle to successful failure? Observation, being able to read a room. Is it possible to be able to read a room?
Yeah.
How would I go about reading a room?
Okay, so if you're reading like a public area,
yeah.
Let's go back to the airport, maybe.
Yeah.
If I'm in a public area, I really want to pay attention to the slowest moving person in the room. I want to pay attention to who is more confident than the other person. And that's typically going back to speed. And if I'm reading other people well, I'm also making a lot of eye contact with them. Mm-hmm. So that's also one of the fastest ways to get a read on another human being is how often they're blinking. And if a person is blinking fast, it's a sign of high stress. Mm-hmm. If they're blinking really slow, it's a sign of focus. So it's not always relaxation. So if I talk to a psychopath in an interrogation room or in a business negotiation, and they're very focused on prey, so we call that a prey focus, because they're going to manipulate somebody, their blink rate will almost be a 0. If I talk to somebody who's being deceptive, their blink rate can go up to like a 75, 80 without us even knowing it. So one of the reasons that blink rate is so reliable is that it's unconscious. We don't realize the shifts in blink rate and we don't manually control it very well. And if all that I would ever need to teach somebody, you don't have to count or know how many times per minute it's going on, is if I'm in a conversation, I'm going to start the conversation and say, is the blink rate normal? Does it look fast? Does it look slow? So what I'm really looking for in human behavior are changes. Mm-hmm. Changes. So if I'm on stage, let's say I'm doing a keynote, and across the room, I'm making eye contact with all these people, and I start seeing an increase in audience blink rate, I know I need to change the subject or change the topic right away.
So would you be looking at one particular person?
No. So
generally,
yeah. So I would look at all of these eyes and pretend like I'm looking at one human.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Getting an average of the...
Yeah. So as I'm looking around, how many blinks do I see? And I'm going to pretend as if that was one human eye.
Okay. So when you get a lower blink rate, people are paying more attention.
Yeah. You're doing a great job. And I go to these pitch meetings where these entrepreneurs will go up and pitch these angel investors and stuff like that up in Washington. And you can measure who will pitch based on blink rate. You see a blink rate drop, that is the most interested person in the room. We do the same thing with jury selection. It's so reliable. And you read these articles about like someone breathing into their chest. It takes a while to get good at that with your peripheral vision, because I've taught it to people and they would spend a conversation with someone staring at their chest. And especially if you're talking to a woman, it's a bad idea. So blink rate is incredibly reliable. So to recap that skill, I start a conversation. Does it look pretty normal? Is it pretty fast or kind of slow? Then I'm going to look for changes. And that's all I'm looking for in a room of people is what's changing.
So 70 is deceptive and 0 is psychopath.
70 is stress, not always deception.
Stress, okay. And 0 is psychopath, basically.
0 might be psychopath. Context is the second letter C. There's 5 C's that we talk about in behavior profiling. So change, then context. Mm-hmm. So now, like somebody just crossed their arms and you read the internet, it says it's being defensive, withholding, closed off, see all that stuff. Well, what if it's freezing cold?
Yeah.
So now we have context.
So interesting. That actually happened in my last conversation. I try not to close off my body when I'm doing this, because sometimes my natural reaction is to go like this. And then sometimes, especially in here when it gets later and we didn't have the fan and the heater, I would go like this.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking, but this is rude. It's rude to the guest. But I looked at my arms and I had these like massive goosebumps, and I was like, "That's the context."
Yeah,
the context is I'm fucking freezing.
Yeah,
but to the guest, it would look like I'm going like this.
Yeah,
but, so this is why body language is so delicate. I think
it is delicate, and it's so hard for people to do peer-reviewed research on it because there's a million variables. It's like saying, well, why should Roger Federer win a tennis match when he doesn't have any peer-reviewed studies to back up what he's doing?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with body language, because like they're doing interrogation research. So they're saying that a college kid who gets a lunch voucher and walks in and pretends to lie about a duck is exactly the same as someone who's been captured in combat, sleep deprived for a few days, has a black hood over their head, and they're drugged into an interrogation room. And they're saying those behaviors are identical. Then there's the peer-reviewed research on lying and not lying. Mm-hmm. It's so, you cannot replicate human behavior that well. So, and people treat it like it's a pharmaceutical. Like I can put a Tylenol in somebody and I can measure all these responses. And it doesn't really go into a spreadsheet like that. And there's a lot of great research out there. But I'd say it's just so incredibly hard to replicate everything with perfection like that.
So what was the first C?
First C is change. I want to look for a change.
And then you want to look at context. Is there a third C?
That would be clusters.
Clusters.
So then you read articles that say someone looks a certain way or does a certain thing that might be deceptive. Like the most common one I hear is someone touches their nose. So someone touching their nose might be being deceptive. If you're just seeing one thing, I would say that almost never means anything. You want to look for a cluster of behavior. So they started getting nervous, which is a change. It's because I'm asking about where they were on Wednesday night. There's the context. And while they were getting nervous, they also started protecting their genitals with their hands and licking their lips, which is a hygienic gesture that we do. So now I have a change within the context that's appropriate, and there's a cluster of behavior. After that, I screen through culture. Is there some part of this person's culture or background that makes them do that? Like I was with a young person, we were watching a Pakistani person get interrogated. And you know how you commonly see that kind of head shake in that region of the world. And they said, oh, he's shaking his head while he's saying yes. I'm like, now we get down to that C. This is culture, which rules out that behavior or gets rid of it. And finally, the least important thing on that list is the checklist. And by checklist, I mean, there is a list of known behaviors that are likely to be deception. And if you're in body language, you deal in likelihood. That's all we deal in. Some people say they're 100% sure on stuff, and I'm skeptical. But we deal in likelihood. So we should always process it in that. So someone licking their lips or moving a certain way, if it's on a checklist, does not mean that it's deceptive. Because what if they do it all the time? Then we don't have a change. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was thinking about things I used to do when I was younger. And there was just a period of my life where, for some bizarre reason, I used to go like this. And I used to do it all the time.
Like a tick?
It was almost like a tick, yeah. Do you know what's really weird? I think this sounds like a really crazy thing to say, but one of my best friends had like curtains, like had the haircut curtains.
Okay.
And he used to flick it. And I almost like vicariously picked up the like flicking from him. I'd go like that all the time. But I was just thinking, if someone saw me doing that, they would perceive that as some form of behavior, whereas it was just this weird thing that lasted for like 2 years when I was younger and then went away.
Yeah, but did you do it all the time?
I just did it. I don't know. I felt like I just did it randomly.
But that wouldn't be a change.
Okay. Yeah.
If I was meeting you.
Yeah.
And you were on the Dragon's Den for a while.
Still am, yeah.
And people pitch you
Yeah.
all kinds of ideas. That just having somebody on the show or just having those skills with you, you could see through a lot of those people. And whether or not they're being honest about what they're pitching, they're confident about what they're pitching. And you could look at a show like Shark Tank, and I can watch any episode of Shark Tank and look who's blinking the least. Mm-hmm. They're going to be the first to make an offer 99% of the time, because they're the most focused on what's going on. They're personally invested. So that's fascinating, is that you could just look at one or two things and predict stress or focus. And just being able to do that, if you just took that one thing away from this, that would be a superpower.
Because I sit here with guests, right, and they talk about their life stories and stuff, and I often see some patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
Specifically like closing up when you ask someone something about their childhood or a specific sensitive subject in their life. Mm-hmm. You tend to see like I call it like self-soothing behavior to some degree. So it's difficult. And it's funny because we're all like amateur body language experts now. Yeah. Because there's been a lot of stuff online saying, spot this, did they touch their nose, etc. So it can also be dangerous.
It can. And it can give us these like, oh, I saw this one thing, I'm never doing business with that guy.
Yeah.
And like he scratched his nose 3 times while he was talking about that. Well, he's look in his briefcase. He's got allergy medication in there. He's scratching his nose. The season just changed. It's springtime. His nose is red when he came in. So he's been scratching it for 30 minutes before he walked in the door. So now we start to realize I'm not seeing a change. I'm seeing something that was repetitive.
And communication is the third one in the triangle to success or failure. Communication. So what I've got so far is talking slow is higher authority.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that if I want to be a master communicator, I should be thinking about?
Absolutely. So when it comes to communication, being a good storyteller is great. And there's a million podcasts out there that can teach somebody that. But it comes down to whether or not you can speak to the person that you are in front of, mm-hmm. and understanding what kind of person that is. And there's a few ways that I identify. I segregate people into 6 groups. And that's through what do they need from other people? So what kind of things do I need socially? And these are significance, mm-hmm. acceptance, mm-hmm. approval, intelligence, pity, and strength / power. And in every conversation, if you ask somebody about themselves, they're going to come across and reveal one of those things to you. So if I know that you are a significance-driven person, mm-hmm. and I'm selling you on how smart of an idea this is and how intelligent you are for making this choice, I'm communicating the way opposite in what you need to hear. So the moment that I hear you talk about yourself, your accomplishments, what you like in life, what happened for you this week, what's a great memory that you have, every conversation, you're going to hear this stuff starting to get revealed. So you hear somebody and these are conversations, or things that you could hear in a conversation pretty quickly. You start talking to somebody and they said, yeah, I'm actually the CEO at that company. I've got 490 people that work for me, and I'm probably going to be making an exit sometime next year. So you hear that. There's significance, right? Mm-hmm. Then you listen for approval. And this is when you hear people say, well, I got to go up on stage tomorrow, but I suck at public speaking. I'm gonna really bomb at it. I'm just really nervous. Trying to get you to say, no, you don't suck. You're great. You did great last time. You're going to rock this. You got this. Then you have the acceptance people. They'll always use the terms like we, us, our, and just team. So the acceptance people are all about like, I'm a member of some kind of group, and that'll come across in their communication. So you ask a significance person about a vacation, and they say, yeah, I went down to Miami. It was fantastic. I had a great time. And I just got back last night. You ask an acceptance person, they'll say, we went down there. All of us went to this thing and we did this. So you hear a lot of this language that talks about groups and membership. You get into the intelligence side. How often do you hear people go, yeah, I actually got my MBA from this person. Oh, I did my master's thesis on that. So you hear this intelligence stuff come out of people. And the pity is, you can identify a pity person pretty well. And those are the hardest people to communicate to. And the pity person always, like, if I want to give you the ideal thing to say to each one of these people, the pity person wants to hear, I can't believe all the stuff that you've been through and you've got to this point. Because I don't think many people would have. Pity wants recognition of suffering. And finally, we have the strength and power person. And this isn't always Biff from Back to the Future. So it can be somebody who's a leader in a company, they want control. So significance is, do I make a difference? Strength and power is, do I have control over other people? These are everybody from like the leader who kind of forces his way into the top to the guy with the ridiculous jacked up pickup truck that has like the plastic testicles hanging off of the back of it.
And once you understand what categorization someone fits into, how would you show up in a way that's effective in communicating with them? Say, for example, if I'm talking to a significance person, do I just, and I'm trying to close a deal with them or something, do I pander to their significance? Is that?
Yeah. So there's a few other types that we teach intelligence people to identify. There's the 6 ways we make decisions, and then 6 ways that we have values, which is our end goal that we want. But I want to speak in a way that says this decision is going to increase your level of significance. And I want to compliment them on their level of significance right before I ask them for something. So I could say, Stephen, this is a great podcast. You've got millions of subscribers, and it's obvious you make a difference in so many people's lives. And you are a significance person. So that would be effective for you, because I know that you want to make the biggest difference that you can. And I want to speak in a way that A, speaks to their needs and lets them know that I am a source for that. But B, that making this decision, whatever we're talking about, selling a car, whatever, is going to increase your ability to get that same need from other people. So I think if we did this together, I think the number one thing that's going to happen right away is you're going to be able to impact twice as many people. And you're going to leave a much deeper footprint in the world. So I'm giving you, we're going to double your subscribers or your listeners, but not just that. You're going to make a bigger impact and legacy on the world. So every time I'm thinking about needs, always think in terms of neurotransmitters. So if I can compliment someone on their need, that's what we need from other people. So I'm giving them like 500 million neurotransmitters being released when they hear this. So it's not just that we're kind of suffering and insecure and all these things that we talked about a minute ago. We're also drug addicts, everybody. We just need to identify the drug that person's addicted to.
I was thinking about the pen. I was going to ask you to, if I'm an intelligence person and you had to sell me the pen.
Yeah.
How would you go about that?
I think there's a lot of people in the world out there, and I think most people just do what other people do. And I'm sure you would agree, there's so many idiots out there that just get with the basic thing. I'm going to do this basic thing, and they don't really go outside the box very often. And every once in a while, you meet somebody who knows higher quality things. And you meet somebody who is able to see things at a level different than other people. And I would talk about that intelligence while subconsciously I'm associating all of that with this. This is different. It's unique. It's a pencil. But it's not like other pencils. It's not the basic run-of-the-mill thing. So I want to present that in a way And I'm going to start with a negative comment. And this is one of the most effective persuasion strategies I'm going to negatively associate something I don't want you to have. So let's say we're starting our podcast and I'm afraid Steven's not going to connect with me. And I know that you're significance driven. As we started out, imagine if I said something at the very beginning of this podcast and I said, Steven, thanks for having me, man. And there's so many people out there. And anytime I say something negative in a conversation, I never want to gesture in between you and me. I always want to gesture away. So we're talking about other people. There's so many people out there who just don't really give back to the world. And they don't really have an interest in helping other people. And it's like every time you meet one of those people, you sit down with them, it's like all of them have the same thing in common. They can't just stop and connect when they sit down with somebody. So I'm demonizing a trait, using your needs that I don't want you to have, like the inability to connect.
Okay, interesting. And you're consciously pointing off to gesture to it's others, not...
Right, until I said the word connect. And then I gestured between you and me, back and forth between both of us. And that word stop is a very powerful word in the English language. So when I said, it's like all of them have the same quality to them. They can't just stop and fully connect with somebody else. That's a very subtle thing, but I've used your neurotransmitters, I've used your needs, and I've got you to agree. You nodded your head. Agree that those people don't really connect well with other people. So that's how powerful that stuff can be. And you can use the same thing in reverse. And I could say a positive thing. And I could say, Steven, what's fascinating to me is I've gone around the world. I've met several entrepreneurs. I've met people who are on TV. And it's like you think that they are just dismissive offhand before you meet them. And it's incredible when you meet these people. It's like all of them have this ability to just tune everything out and just completely connect with somebody. And that would have the same effect.
And what's going on there? People, we want to be that person because it's positive. We want to live up to that expectation set.
Right. So what I've done is I've got you to say, as Chris Voss would put it, that's right.
Okay.
But I've got you to say that about who you are as a person.
Okay.
So now I'm not changing your ideas. I'm changing your identity.
Changing my identity or?
Yeah, because you've made an agreement about who you are. You've nodded your head.
Okay. And
if I wanted to take that further, I would make an admission first and I'd say, you know what? I had social anxiety growing up and I'm curious, what is it that, have you always been able to just connect with everybody you talk to, or is this something that you had to work on?
Oh, is that a question?
Yeah.
Okay, but I know it's not a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's a good question.
The moment that you ask, that you start to answer that question, you've made an agreement about who you are as a person. So if I wanted somebody to be less closed off, I might say, I've spent my whole life just worried about what other people think. And I was 25 before I got to a point where I was able to open up. Have you always been this open with people, or did you have to work on that? So just any answer, and no one's going to give you an answer of like, actually, I'm just closed off. I'm very closed-minded, and that's maybe a 0.1% of people. So small agreements, and none of these are designed for people to take word for word. I guess they can, but it's about the idea of getting someone to comment on their own identity, who they are as a person.
Is there anything else as it relates to communication that's especially important? It's funny that so many people are interested in the communication part more so than the listening part.
They want the flight checklist.
Yeah. I was thinking with Julian Treasure, who did the TED talk on how to be a great speaker. He told me he also did a TED talk on how to be a great listener. No one listened. He said everyone wanted to, his one on speaking has got like 35 million views, but the one on listening, just no one's interested in that. But I'm guessing listening plays a pretty critical role to being a great speaker.
Yeah, and listening means I can identify who you are and what the needs that are driving you and the social needs and the way that you make decisions.
Is that part of the observation part?
Yes, absolutely. Just listening to that means that now I have the right words to use for the communication and the right understanding of what motivates you as a person. So if I'm a therapist, that makes me a better therapist. If I'm a hostage negotiator, that makes me a better hostage negotiator. And if I'm a suicide hotline operator, that makes me way better at my job because I'm understanding exactly who I'm talking to. And my goal is to talk someone into doing something that they normally would not do.
You talk about this elicitation.
Yeah.
What is elicitation? It's a CIA technique, right?
It is. It was originally came up with by this guy named John Nolan, and his book is no longer for sale. You have to get it on eBay. It's hard to find. But the book is called Confidential.
Why isn't it no longer for sale?
I think that he just kind of pulled it off the shelf. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So elicitation is about using statements instead of questions. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you and I walk into Whole Foods, we're in New York, so it's probably a block away somewhere. Mm-hmm. And we walk in there, and let's say there's a young lady stocking produce. Mm-hmm. And you get in there, and I say, all right, Stephen, your goal is to go figure out how much she makes in 60 seconds, and you're not allowed to ask any questions or be awkward. And that's tough, right? It sounds really tough. So if you went over to her, and this is a generalization just to get you to understand what elicitation is, and said, hey, I'm trying to find the baby carrots. And she walks you over there, but while you're walking, you say, I just read this article online that says all Whole Foods employees just got bumped up to $26 an hour. That's fantastic. And she turns around and goes, what? No, I make 17. So now she doesn't feel like she's been pressed or questioned about how much she makes. She's correcting you. Mm-hmm. Or let's say you got into an Uber tonight and you said, I just read this article that Uber drivers were one of the top most highly satisfied employees in the country. You're going to get a correction. And you're going to be like, what? Where did you read that? So triggering a need to correct the record is one of the easiest ways to use elicitation, but it's only one. Another one is just making a statement afterwards and saying, I bet you had some interesting experiences doing that, or I can imagine that was challenging. Statements are always going to be better than asking pointed questions because a person feels like they're volunteering information. The third layer of that is disbelief. So let's say I wanted to ask if you just got back from vacation and I didn't want to use any questions. Let's say we meet up for dinner or something, and I said, Steven, you look like you just got back from a vacation. That's a statement. And you're like, no, actually, I've been doing this, 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 and this. So now you've given me more than if I just asked if you were on vacation. Mm-hmm. And I said, wow, that had to be interesting. I can't imagine that. There's got to be a lot of stuff going on there. And you start talking more and more and more. And then, like, that sounds great. There was no challenges to that entire trip. I love when everything is 100% flawless. And you're like, no, well, actually, and then you start going into that, and I'm like, no way. And then now we have disbelief that comes in. And I haven't asked a single question yet. So that's one thing that I challenge everybody that I train to get really good at is that elicitation piece. So how many layers can I get into a person or a conversation just using these statements? And that's why I wrote, there's a whole chapter about it in this book here. But that elicitation is powerful because we're not being asked questions. So our brain doesn't set off little security alarms. And this is how Soviet spies would get information from a 19-year-old U.S. Navy sailor in the early days of the Cold War. Ship would pull into Thailand, or a submarine would pull into Thailand or Singapore. Then a Russian would go up and these sailors would be drinking at the bar. Russian would sit there. He's got a Aloha shirt on or something, and strike up a conversation. And they say, I know that the German submarines could outrun you because their propellers are 22 and all of your submarine propellers are 18 feet in diameter. And the sailor, slightly drunk, turns around and says, no, they're not. And starts giving up all this information just to correct the record. And that's all they did back then, was just correcting the record. I'm triggering this need to offer some kind of correction to information that's inaccurate. And even with business intelligence, let's say that a company's moving and they have to get business intelligence. Somebody at that company will get approached at a bar and somebody will say, yeah, I heard you guys are moving between March and April. And they'll get corrected and they'll say, no, it's actually February, but we're not really supposed to talk about it. It's like, there's no way you're going to move in February. It's too cold and the interest rates are up too high. There's no possible way that the CEO would ever do that. It's like, yeah. And then you're going to get more information out because of the disbelief. So that was correcting the record. A second technique called bracketing, where I'm giving you a series like between March and May, or between 39 and 59. And the third is the disbelief that starts getting this information out of people. So if you want to think about like, how do I start a conversation or continue one using elicitation, think of the words so, and then do a recap. So you've been doing this for 3 years, or so this is not the best job, but it's getting things done for you. Or I bet. So I bet that was interesting. I bet there were still some challenges there. Or I bet you overcame a whole lot to get to this point. So, or I bet is the best way to do that.
And so if I say, I bet you hate that coffee.
Yeah.
That's a statement, but you're going to endeavor to correct the record either way.
Yeah.
And if you do hate the coffee, you'll say, yeah, like even you saying, yes, I do kind of hate it is offering up information.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And you could even go on with that. Be like, I bet you hate that coffee. And somebody says, yeah, well, I do kind of hate it. Like, I can imagine you're the kind of person who likes coffee a very specific way. Well, yeah, here's how I like it a lot. And say, that's extremely interesting. No creamer, no sugar. And I'm just recapping.
So why is that better than me just going, how do you prefer your coffee?
Well, if we're just talking about coffee, it's not sensitive information. So I wouldn't say that was better.
It's for sensitive information.
Yeah.
When you're trying to not get their guard up.
Yeah. So the rule of thumb is the more sensitive the information is that you need, the less questions you need to be asking.
And is that what, I mean, that does correlate to kind of like how I've, the information that the spies I've interviewed have given me. Like Andrew Bustamante and Mike Baker, they've both said that much of the game was like hearing someone out and just letting them talk and talk and talk and talk.
Yeah.
But not being too pushy.
Yeah. And that's the best way to not be pushy is to use the elicitation stuff.
Perception, context, permission, the PCP model is a way of understanding how to get someone to do something from joining a cult to buying an item.
Yeah. So the PCP model looks like it's 3 steps, but it's, I want you to view it as kind of dominoes. So one step starts the progress of coming down the other. And once that comes down, the next domino starts going down. Mm-hmm. So if I change your perception about something, then I change the context that you're viewing that in, which changes the way that you feel permission to do it. So I'll give you an example. Would you want a weird example or a boring one? Let's go with weird.
Okay.
So let's go with an attorney in Washington State was charged with assault of a woman using hypnosis. And he would have her get naked in his office, which is something she would not normally do. And the attorney was studying this hypnosis and stuff like that. He wasn't, as far as I know, he was not even good. But he would hypnotize her and then tell her, at the end of the day, you come home from work and this is just like that time. I want you to picture yourself. It's the end of the day. You're coming home from work. You drop your keys in the bowl. You make your way to the bathroom. You turn on a hot shower. And now you're here getting ready to get into that shower. So he's changed her perception of where she is. He changed the context of neither one of you or me right now would like get naked on a podcast, but both of us are going to later tonight when we go to shower. So, but because that's a different context. So he modified the context, which gave her permission to remove clothing or do something that we otherwise wouldn't do in a social setting. One of the ways I studied this, and it was fascinating, is cult recruiters. I spent a long time, 6 weeks, working with these cult recruiters. And I was back and forth between cult recruiters and door-to-door salespeople. And these are hard-hitting people, man. It's a hard job, door-to-door sales. But they talk people into doing things they probably wouldn't otherwise have done. Installing a $95,000 solar system on their roof, or buying a vacuum cleaner, or joining a cult that's probably harmful. But all of them started off the conversation by changing the perception of what's going on. So instead of me saying, hey, let me talk to you about this thing that's from a needy perspective, they come out with a survey. And they say it's an anonymous survey, which automatically makes the people more open. So it's an anonymous survey. I've changed permission. So now the context has shifted slightly. And if I could change your perception again, would you rather be in a group of people who feel like family or people who are related to you? So I start asking all these little questions about how would you rather live your life in a way that's like just kind of nudging you down into this cult mindset of like, do you want to be around people that enjoy your company? Like those kind of questions. So more perception changes. Now the context shifts to where I've just made 25 agreements about who I am as a human being. So now my context is way off, which shifts my permission. It's like, I have permission to do this because that's the kind of person I've just agreed to be. And that's who I've said that I am. I have to do this because that's cognitive dissonance like crazy. And one thing I teach about any persuasion, whether you're doing a psyop on an entire country, or you're just manipulating one person, or doing therapy on one person, your main weapon as a person who is persuasive or influential is cognitive dissonance.
Which is?
I'm getting you to be uncomfortable because the way that I've got you to see the world doesn't match up with what you're doing. So the easiest thing for you to change is what you're doing. Instead of changing your mind about something or calling yourself dumb, I just get you to do something different. And that's weaponized cognitive dissonance. And we're seeing a lot of that with the extreme left, extreme right politics on both of those extremes. Once I get a person to make even one or two or three statements about their identity, I have drastically altered how they're going to behave in the future. Robert Cialdini, who wrote Influence and Persuasion, a wonderful human being, wrote about this, where a few weeks before they go ask somebody to put a giant ugly sign in their yard that says drive safe, huge ugly sign. 2 weeks before that, they go by door to door and say, do you support safe driving? Yes or no? Who's going to say no? It's like 91% said, yeah, I support safe driving. And they said, good. Will you put this tiny sticker in your front window? Tiny little sticker. And just to let us know that you're supporting safe driving. That's all we ask you to do. 2 weeks later, they come back to the neighborhood. Like 89% of people are sticking these signs in their yard. The other neighborhood they did the test on didn't have this little survey, do you support safe driving first? And it was like 6% stuck the sign in their yard. So making one agreement about who I am and then taking action on it. So if I can get you to take action on something, not in just between you and me, now I got you to put a sticker on your window. I got you to do something that alters the way other people see you. So if I can get you to make something that I've got you to believe public, I can get you to make a Twitter post, I can get you to make a Facebook post. Now I've captured identity. So most persuasion and influence training in the world is about capturing ideas. Identity is where you truly get to change behavior, because I'm getting you to agree that you are a certain type of person before I want you to do anything.
Interesting. It explains a lot about politics, in fact, and what we see go on in the election cycles, and also just how a political party, political group can slowly drift together to a position that objectively you go, bloody hell, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because they kind of they say, I'm this party, I signed up to this particular political party. And then slowly, just with like creep of beliefs, you end up over 10 years, all of you believing and thinking something is okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's just because you made an agreement.
I guess in part that explains some of the wars as well. Like there's an element here which can explain things like Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
and how a civilization can go from being relatively normal to doing really horrific, barbaric things to people.
Yeah. And if you just going back to the Milgram experiment, right away, I got you to say, do you fully volunteer to participate in this? Would you accept the role of teacher? Would you sit down in this chair? Would you shock him with this low voltage?
Mm-hmm.
I've got you to agree that I'm the kind of person that's willing to shock someone for an experiment within the first 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't talk about that. They kind of tend to say the whole experiment's about authority. But I don't think it's all authority. I think a lot of it is novelty. And they don't talk about that ever in these recaps of the study. But if you volunteer for that experiment, you're driving on a campus you've probably not been on, going into a building you've never been to, meeting a guy in a lab coat that you've never met, but another guy you've never met, in a room that you've never met, sat in front of a machine you've never seen, reading a quiz that you've never read in your entire life. All of these things, brand new. The number one thing that generates focus in the mammalian brain, and this is dog, you name it, is novelty. So our ancestors, they're walking past a bush every day of their life. And one day, sun's about to set and a stick snaps behind that bush. That's novelty. That's an unexpected piece of information.
New information, or is it unexpected?
Yeah.
What's your definition of novelty here?
Novelty is my brain is expecting certain things to happen. I'm going to walk past this bush, just like I've done before. I have kind of a script for running things, and something happens that breaks that script of what I am predicting about the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any kind of novelty generates focus. So the 4 things that we can manipulate inside of a human brain spells out the word fate. So the 4 ways to manipulate or influence a mammal, and this is human, dog, you name it, is through focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. Those are the 4 things that a dog can feel. If you're looking at a dog training video, you're watching, let's say you're binge watching 3 seasons of Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan, you're seeing him redirect focus, establish authority, show contact with the tribe, and praise the dog when the dog's doing well. Focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. Mm-hmm. That's how we train animals. It's also how an infomercial gets you to buy something. They grab your focus. They show you, here's a million people who've already bought it so far. And they all have these 5-star reviews. Everybody in your neighborhood's doing it, or all these people across the United States are doing it. They're getting success. And all of their friends love them because of that success. Now we get emotion. And they show it visually. They don't just say it. They're showing those visual images to show the mammal brain the focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. It spells fate.
I was thinking about a lot of like fizzy drink ads in the sunshine in the summer, and you see, you hear the sound like as they like break it open. There's people there. I guess that's the tribe having a great time. And I was just struggling with the authority part in that context of those ads you see for like a fizzy drink brand.
I think the authority would be the on-screen presence or brand recognition.
Okay. Or it could be a celebrity or something.
Yeah. And this is coming from a tribal leader. As if our ancestors didn't listen to a tribal leader, you don't live very long.
In your work, you talk about how to win an argument. And when I say win an argument, I don't really mean an argument. I mean more like, me and my girlfriend are having a conversation.
Yeah.
And I want to get to a good resolution. What are the things I should definitely not do?
Calling out little points that any kind of incorrect information, we wait until the end. We save it.
Okay.
So if I'm in an argument with someone and they're calling me out for doing something I clearly didn't do, I'll wait. I want to wait.
Why?
Because they get diffused. Now that we want them to get that out first. But right away, as soon as possible, in any argument like this, I want to establish, like, do we have a similar common ground? What common ground do we share? And do we want a similar outcome? And I might even ask that question, be like, really quick, do we both want the same thing from this discussion? I would never call it an argument. So the moment that we redirect on, this is the outcome I want, instead of I need to win an argument, because when we're in a fight, we tend to think I intellectually need to conquer this conversation.